Hi, welcome to the TOEFL 2026 Write for an Academic Discussion section. We're going to be going through a couple of different writings to show you how to best implement this writing section. So let's take a look at what is coming and what's required. So in the 2026 version of this test, it's a new version of the test, and there are 3 different task types. The first task type is building a sentence. You have to take a bunch of scrambled words and you have to reorganize them into a correct word order. The second section is to write an email where you read a short scenario and you have to respond with an email that covers 3 specific points from it. And the section that we're going to be covering today is writing for an academic discussion. So what is happening is there's going to be a post that you have of a professor's question and a class board message that you have to respond to. So what to expect on this test? Well, you're going to get a professor posting a academic style question, and then 2 of your classmates or 2 classmates are going to have replied already with their own views. So you're going to get an outline of what the topic is, what you're expecting from the professor, and then 2 different opinions on this particular topic. Your job is to add a genuine contribution, and this is important. So your job isn't to summarize the data or to restate the main ideas. Your job is to add a genuine contribution or ideas of your own that facilitate a furthering of the discussion. And this can be organized in a number of ways. So you could challenge one of the students, you could challenge both of the students and come up with a completely different idea. You could agree with one of the students. However, if you choose to go the agree route, then you do have to further the discussion and not just repeat what's already been said in this one. You have about 10 minutes to read everything and write your response. So you do have to go through this fairly quickly because there are 3 fairly large readings that you have to do in this one. And then the writing section is not particularly in depth. It's only 100 words, but there is this idea that you have to adequately read and you have to adequately understand the concepts that are being presented. So scoring is done by a AI scoring engine, and it looks at elaboration. So you have to further the concepts or you have to push them in a new direction. Sentence variety, word choice, and how relevant your contribution is and how academically geared it is as well. So that's what's being looked for on this test. A strategy checklist for this test is that you have to state a clear position. Okay? You can't just summarize the 2 ideas or the professor's idea and expect to pull off full marks for this. You have to add a position of your own, something that furthers the topic or gives more information about the topic. You have to reference what the classmates said, but you also have to build on it or push back against it. So you can challenge it, you can agree with them, but if you agree with them, you have to add more information or add more to the discussion about what they're talking about. You have to support your opinion, so you can't just place an opinion there and leave it. You have to support it with specific reasons, examples, and comparisons, not just an assertion. So not just an opinion. You have to give reasons and examples that you have that opinion or to support your opinion. Variable sentence structure and vocabulary, academically based vocabulary. You will have very good vocabulary at your disposal through these 2 responses and the teacher's response, but you are challenged to avoid the keywords. And so a series of substitutions with synonyms is a very good idea. And you're supposed to get at least 100 words with this. Let's take a look at this. So I'm going to present this in 2 different ways. I'm going to present this in a simple version where technically this version is very, very good, but it falls short. So I would score this somewhere on a 3 to 5. And then after this, I'm going to show you a more advanced version that would get higher points. So my goal here is to show you how you can effectively finish the information, but then how you can push this from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 score on this text. So what we've got here is we've got a professor's professors post to this academic board and a question. So let's read through this. Artificial intelligence is transforming many aspects of work and daily life, offering significant benefits in efficiency, accuracy, and the ability to analyze complex data. However, these advances have also raised concerns about job displacement, privacy, and the concentration of power in the hands of a small number of technology companies. Some experts argue that the benefits of AI in healthcare, education, scientific research, and productivity outweigh the risks, and that society should focus on managing the transition rather than slowing development. Others argue that the pace of AI deployment has outrun our ability to understand and regulate its consequences, and that governments should impose stricter controls on AI development. To what extent should the development and deployment of artificial intelligence be regulated by governments? We've got this bold text here that shows us the actual question. And then we have two student responses here. So student one says, I think some regulation is necessary. So we've already identified a couple of key ideas here. How much regulation should we have of AI? Student one is saying some regulation, but it needs to be targeted and proportionate rather than restrictive. The risks of AI are real, particularly in high stakes domains like healthcare, criminal justice, and hiring, and there is a clear case for requiring transparency, explainability, and accountability in systems that affect people's lives, but heavy-handed regulation that applies equally to all AI applications would stifle beneficial innovation. The goal should be to regulate outcomes and uses, not the technology itself. Okay, so student one is taking this idea of some regulation, and we should regulate outcomes and uses, but not just have a blanket or total regulation of the technology. Student two says, I think concerns about under-regulation is more pressing than the concern about stifling innovation. Okay, so student two is taking this secondary approach where we have to be very cautious about this technology. We need to very clearly regulate the technology. The companies developing AI have strong commercial incentives to deploy quickly and little incentive to absorb the social costs of displacement or misuse. History shows us that self-regulation in powerful industries rarely works. Governments need to establish clear rules before harms become irreversible, not after. The short-term cost of slower deployment is worth paying for a more trustworthy and equitable AI future. Okay, so your challenge here is to either challenge both of these, to challenge one of these while supporting the other one, or to go a completely different direction with these. Any of those are appropriate setups for this. So it doesn't matter what your actual opinions are and what you do. It matters more how you do it. So let's take a look at this one. I agree with student two. Okay, so very, very simple setup of it that I agree with student two. The governments need to regulate AI. Companies want to make money fast. They do not think about the risks very much. AI can hurt people if it is not checked. For example, AI in hiring or healthcare can be unfair to people. If there are no rules, companies might not fix these problems by themselves. I think governments should make rules before AI causes big problems. It is better to have rules early than wait until something bad happens. So I think regulation is important and governments should act now to protect people from the risks of AI. Wait, so this is what I would describe as sort of a 3.5 style response if I were to score this one. There's nothing technically wrong with it. It encompasses many of the ideas that you are supposed to be doing with these, where you are agreeing with one student, but you are furthering or you're giving more information about what they're saying. You are setting up ideas. We need to regulate AI. Companies want to make money fast. They do not think about the risks very much. AI can hurt people. So we need to regulate because companies will not do that on their own. Okay, so it sets up these very well-supported ideas and principles. But what takes this from a 3 to a 5 style response is this is very, very simple. The sentence structures are incredibly short. So like if we look at these sentences, most of these sentences are not particularly long. AI can hurt people if it's not checked. These are extremely simple sentence formats. Also, the vocabulary that's being used here, I agree. They do not think about the risks very much. AI can hurt people if it is not checked. Okay, these are what I would describe as 3-level vocabulary and 3-level sentence structures. And so to push this from a 3 to a 4 to a 5, what you need to do is you need to increase the complexity and you need to increase the academic nature of the sentence structures and the vocabulary. So for example, I agree with, okay, there's nothing wrong with this. However, it is my stance that student 2 has the stronger opinion that governments need to regulate AI. Companies want to make money fast. Okay? This could very easily become something like companies are more concerned with profits than with human safety. They are specifically set up where they have to represent shareholders, and so their moral and ethical decision-making processes are very subject to economic principles. They do not think about the risks very much. Okay, so these are just much more complicated, much more complex ways to say this and to add that vocabulary and sentence structure necessary to really push this into a higher level response. Let's take a look at what I would describe as a top level and near perfect response. So already I lean toward student 2's position. We're changing the way we present this information. Though I'd push back on the assumption that, okay, so slightly challenging the assumption, regulation and innovation are necessarily in tension. History suggests that clear rules often accelerate adoption rather than slow it, since they give companies a predictable framework to build within instead of shifting patchwork of liability. Aviation safety standards, okay, very clear, specific example, are a useful comparison. They don't stall the industry, they made flying trustworthy enough to scale. The deeper risk with under-regulation isn't just harm after the fact. It's that public distrust, once AI causes a high-profile failure, could trigger far more restrictive backlash than any proactive policy would have imposed. So while student 1 is right, okay, so recognizing student 1, and remember that's important. You have to recognize both of the students' opinions. So while student 1 is right that blanket restrictions could stifle beneficial uses, remember these words, okay? So like blanket restrictions, that this is a great word, could stifle beneficial uses. This is fantastic vocabulary and it's things that can be used over and over again. You're going to have this presentation of some sort of academic discussion. And I would say these kind of words, blanket restrictions, stifle beneficial uses, targeting something, outcome-focused rules established early seem like the safer bet, even safer bet. This is all really good vocabulary to start memorizing and start working into your particular outputs for this writing. So outcome-focused rules established early seem like the safer bet for both innovation and public trust in the long run. Okay. Another thing to note is that you've got a very, very strong conclusion in this one where you're very clearly stating the main idea again, where you've got this idea of outcome-focused rules established early seem like a safer bet for both innovation and public trust in the long run. You're summarizing and restating your main idea, and that's very important with these, to have a very strong academic presentation with these. So that's the way you go from a 3 to a higher than 3, a 3 and beyond answer, the 4s and the 5s for this one. Let's take a quick look at what's expected of scoring. Let's start with 0 and go up. So no scoreable response is basically you've left a blank, you're completely off topic, you're talking about your mother's dishwasher rather than AI, it's not written in English or it's copied directly from the prompt and you're just like piecing together sentences from the prompt. That will get you a 0. That won't even get you a point on this. Okay. A 1 would be an unsuccessful response, so an ineffective attempt to contribute language limits, words and phrases show an attempt at the task. So this would be things like, we need to make AI stop. AI is bad. Okay, so you are not completing the task. Even if you have kind of the right ideas, the task is being completely unsuccessfully transmitted. Okay. A mostly unsuccessful response would be kind of basically what I just outlined. That would be somewhere between a 2 and a 1, where your ideas are there. You kind of present an opinion, but it's really poorly elaborated, or it's only partially relevant. You have a limited range of sentence structures and vocabulary, and the errors in the sentence structure or vocabulary really present problems to the understanding. Partially successful response is what I would describe as the first response that we went through. This is mostly relevant, mostly understandable. It's kind of a technically good answer. I would score that first one somewhere between a 3 and a 4. It's kind of there. It depends on how the AI is programmed to score these ones. But it's got the explanation example are there, but they're partially missing. They may be unclear. There's some sentence structure issues, very poor variety, very simplistic sentence structure, and a very limited range of vocabulary. Some noticeable errors in structure, word form, and idiom. And so that's why I kind of labeled that one as about a 3.5, because it doesn't really have errors in structure, word form. It's kind of a technically perfect response. It's just not very complete or not very complex. A generally successful response would be one that kind of incorporates the first one. It successfully talks about the things that you need to talk about, but it has a very limited variety, sentence structure, appropriate word choice. So somewhere between 3 and a 4 for that one. But to push it into the 5 is that more complex version. Okay, so it effectively builds on one of the responses, challenges the responses. It is on topic. It is well elaborating the expressions and the explanations and the topic that you're trying to present, presenting clear examples like the airplane example, having a very high level of variety of sentence structures and very natural but also very academic word choice in this. And some errors are forgivable, spelling errors, the occasional word choice error here and there is okay. Punctuation errors are acceptable for a top level response, but for the most part, this is a nearly perfect expectation to pull off a score of 5. So that's what's expected of you on this one, and that is the third section of the writing test for the 2026 test.